being from emotional eating or whatever triggered it, even from as a kid, little triggers and little things that happened in my life that made me comfort.
Why did Janet Jackson, one of the biggest stars in the world, face so much sadness in her life? How did someone with so much talent and success end up dealing with pain and public struggles? From family issues to career challenges, what led to the heartbreaking moments in her journey? And how did the world's reactions make things even harder for her? Let's explore her tragic story.
Janet Jackson is the youngest of the Jackson musical dynasty, but she's so much more than that. People didn't really expect much of her when she was a kid, I don't think, because she was the little cute.
Janet Jackson was born on May 16, 1966, in Gary, Indiana. She was the youngest of 10 kids in the Jackson family. They were a working-class African-American family living in a small two-bedroom house on Jackson Street.
The Jackson family were in Gary, Indiana, so they were quite a poor family. They lived all together. There were like 6 kids living together in a tiny...
Her mom, Catherine, played musical instruments like the clarinet and piano. She had dreams of becoming a country singer, but ended up working part-time at Sears to help support the family. Her dad, Joe, was a former boxer who worked as a crane operator and played guitar in a local band to bring in extra money. Growing up, Janet had a tough childhood. In a 2011 interview, she talked about how strict her father was. Her siblings thought Joe was easier on her, but Janet said he was still very tough. He didn't like it when she cried, and he rarely said, "I love you." Instead of calling him Dad, she had to call him Joseph. Janet shared that her dad could be physically tough with her brothers, but he only hit her once when she was about 7 or 8 years old. She didn't even remember why it happened.
Both Michael and Latoya in their biographies talked about how strict Joseph was, whether it was like physical abuse or what was more emotional abuse. They were scared of him.
As a kid, Janet didn't dream of being a star. She wanted to be a horse racing jockey or a lawyer, planning to pay for school by acting. However, her family expected her to join the entertainment world. She started to think about singing after hearing herself in a recording studio. At just 7 years old, Janet performed with her sisters at the MGM Casino in Las Vegas.
It being from emotional eating or whatever triggered it, even from as a kid, little triggers and little things that happened in my life that made me comfort.
Now, Janet, like so many women, has struggled with self-esteem for most of her life. She's open about her challenges and how far she's come. In her own words, she says she's learned to handle things better now. She believes in using all kinds of help, therapy, exercise, and spirituality to feel better about herself. Her challenges started early. At just 10 years old, Janet got a role as Penny Woods on the popular 1970s TV show Good Times. But being a young girl on television wasn't easy. Janet shared that the show's team made her feel like her body wasn't acceptable. "They wrapped my chest with gauze to make me look smaller," she said. "It made me feel like I wasn't good enough as I was."
Is who here?
I don't know his name, but he's tall, skinny, and
Things got worse as she grew older. In the second season of the show, she was told she needed to lose weight. Janet also faced teasing at home. Her brother, Michael Jackson, would sometimes call her names like Dunk and Slaughterhog. While he probably didn't mean to hurt her, those words stuck with Janet and affected how she felt about herself. Between the teasing and the pressures from Good Times, Janet started to feel bad about herself and struggled with how she saw her body. As Janet grew up, these experiences stayed with her. As an adult, these feelings turned into an eating disorder. Janet said she would binge eat when she felt upset or depressed because food gave her comfort. But after eating too much, she'd feel guilty and beat herself up. At times, she also dealt with bulimia and anorexia, swinging between eating too much and eating too little. She admitted she kept wanting to lose more weight, even when she was already very thin.
We just kept it private. It was just a very private thing. We never told anyone. And we I think one or two people in my family knew. We just ran off and kind of did it.
Now, when it comes to her personal life, Janet has been married 3 times. Surprisingly, many people don't know much about her weddings or relationships. She kept most of them private, away from the public eye. Her first marriage was in 1984, when Janet was just 18 years old. She ran away to get married to James DeBarge, a singer from the R&B group DeBarge. This surprised and worried her family, including her brothers and parents. Even John McClane, an important person at her record label, A&M Records, was upset. He told her that getting married might not be good for her career because she was a teen idol, loved by many young fans. After about 8 months, Janet decided to end the marriage and got it annulled, which means it was as if the marriage never happened.
And for the wrong reasons. We definitely loved each other, but it was more of a saving, thinking that you could save someone.
Janet's personal life hasn't always been easy. For 2 years, she went through a tough time with depression. Janet said this time in her life was extremely hard. She wasn't speaking to her sister LaToya, and she barely talked to her brother Michael Jackson. She hadn't even met his baby son during that time. Janet opened up about this struggle in an interview with Newsweek. She said, "I was very, very sad. Some days I couldn't even get out of bed. I felt like everything around me was closing in." At first, she thought she was just having a bad day, but the sadness kept getting worse until it was happening every single day. During this time, Janet was working on her album The Velvet Rope. Recording music became very hard for her. She cried so much that she couldn't sing. It made finishing the album take longer because she had to stop recording when her feelings became too overwhelming. Janet believes her depression started when she was in elementary school. She said some of her teachers were not kind to her. She mentioned one teacher in particular who embarrassed her in front of her entire class. That moment stuck with her and hurt her deeply, even as she got older. More than 20 years later, DeBarge claimed on the TV series Growing Up Hip Hop that his brief relationship with Jackson produced a secret daughter, a notion Jackson denied in a 2001 interview with Vibe. Did you also know Janet Jackson's second husband once sued her for millions of dollars after their divorce? Yeah, you heard that right. So after her relationship with James DeBarge, she went on to marry Renee Elizondo in 1991. But here's the catch. Nobody even knew they were married. They kept it a secret for years. Renee wasn't just her husband, he was also her creative partner. He helped write 37 of her songs, directed music videos like Again and That's the Way Love Goes, and even acted in her movie Poetic Justice. They seemed like a great team, but things weren't perfect behind the scenes. By 2000, after 9 years of marriage, Renee filed for divorce. He said they had irreconcilable differences, which is a fancy way of saying they couldn't work things out. But that wasn't the end of their story. Later that year, Renee sued Janet for millions of dollars. Renee claimed Janet had promised to share the money and property they earned together before they got married. He said she agreed to give him profits from her 1989 album, Rhythm Nation 1814, and some other assets. The media reported different numbers, but Renee was asking for anywhere between $10 million and $25 million. Janet denied the claims, and they battled it out in court for 2 years. In the end, Janet had to pay Renee $15 million. On top of that, she gave him a Mercedes car and the deed to a beautiful 5-bedroom beach house in Malibu. It's clear that Janet and Renee's relationship wasn't just about love, it was also about business. When things ended, it got messy, as money often does in divorces. Janet moved on from this chapter of her life. She later married Wissam Almana, a billionaire businessman, in 2012. They had a son together in 2017 but split not long after. Sources say their cultural differences caused problems, and Janet felt Wissam became too controlling during her pregnancy.
Surprise news from singer Janet Jackson just 3 months after the birth of her first child. The 50-year-old star announcing she has split from her husband of 5 years. And as Jim Murray reports, it is significant that the marriage lasted that long.
In February 2004, Janet Jackson was chosen by the National Football League, NFL, and MTV to perform at the Super Bowl 38 halftime show. It was a huge opportunity for her to showcase her music to 140 million viewers. She performed a mix of her biggest hits like All For You, Rhythm Nation, and Rock Your Body. During the performance of Rock Your Body, something unexpected happened. Justin Timberlake, who was performing with her, accidentally tore off part of her costume, exposing her right breast to the live audience. This event, which became known as Nipplegate, shocked everyone. The media immediately jumped on the incident, calling it a publicity stunt. But if you looked at Janet's face right after it happened, you could see she was clearly embarrassed and distressed. It wasn't planned at all. Janet later explained that Timberlake was supposed to pull away her bustier, leaving her red lace bra intact. But it went wrong. She apologized, saying she never meant to offend anyone, and that MTV, CBS, and the NFL didn't know about the wardrobe malfunction. Despite her apology, the incident led to huge consequences. The Federal Communications Commission, FCC, fined the companies involved, and it caused a long investigation that lasted for years.
Outrageous.
CBS is now facing millions of dollars in fines. Network officials say they had been watching rehearsals all week, and there was no indication that any costumes would be ripped off.
While Timberlake was allowed to perform at the Grammy Awards, Janet was not. She had been scheduled to present at the ceremony, but after the Super Bowl incident, she was banned. Janet also had to step away from a planned biographical film about Lena Horne, which was to be made by ABC. Reports suggested that Horne's family was unhappy with Janet's involvement, though Janet's team said she chose to leave the project on her own. The backlash didn't stop there. At Walt Disney World, a statue of Mickey Mouse wearing Janet's iconic Rhythm Nation outfit had been put up as a tribute to her. But after the Super Bowl incident, it was removed. It seemed like everything about Janet's career was being overshadowed by the controversy. In March 2004, Janet released her album Damita Jo, named after her middle name. The album did well initially, debuting at #2 on the Billboard 200 and even went platinum in a month. However, much of the attention surrounding the album was focused on the Super Bowl incident, not the music itself. Critics either liked or disliked the album, but it was hard for them to focus on the music with all the media frenzy. Janet's music was also blacklisted by many radio stations and music channels. CBS CEO Les Moonves was said to have pressured companies like MTV, VH1, and major radio stations to avoid playing her songs. This boycott affected the album's performance. The album's singles were well received, but because of the blacklisting, they didn't chart well. It's believed that if it weren't for the Super Bowl controversy, her singles would have done much better.
But the head of the Federal Communications Commission calls it a deplorable stunt, ordering a full-scale investigation.
Despite Timberlake causing the accident, he famously did not apologize until it was time for him to promote his second album. This apology did not surface until 2006, 2 years later. For 2 years, Justin stayed silent about the situation, and during that time, Janet faced a lot of criticism. Her career took a huge hit. Not only did her music and tours suffer, but she was also blacklisted from the entertainment industry. While Justin's career continued to thrive, Janet's was struggling.
That's really what's outrageous, that in that sacred period of time, you would launch this on someone seems to me to be outrageous.
When Justin finally apologized, some people felt it was genuine. His apology came across as a little too late, and many people felt it was more about fixing his own image than truly supporting Janet. Many also felt that he didn't really defend Janet when she needed it the most. For example, Justin even made fun of Janet in one of his songs, "Give It To Me," where he mentioned her name. It seemed like he was mocking the very apology he had just given her. This situation shows how unfair things were, especially for women in the music industry, particularly women of color like Janet. The way Janet was treated after the Super Bowl incident was an example of how toxic and male-dominated the celebrity culture was in the 2000s. While some things have improved, there is still a lot of progress to be made. Janet wasn't just hurt by the Super Bowl incident. In 2007, during an interview about an upcoming movie, reporters kept asking her inappropriate questions about her body and the Nipplegate event. They didn't let it go, even when Tyler Perry, who was with her, tried to redirect the conversation. Janet became upset, but the reporters kept pushing. This shows how the media treated her unfairly, while Justin Timberlake didn't face the same level of scrutiny. The way Justin and Janet's careers took different paths after the incident highlights a deeper issue in the entertainment industry. Janet's career was damaged beyond repair, while Justin benefited from the controversy, largely because of his privilege as a white male. However, it's clear that racism and misogyny played a big part in how she was treated after the Super Bowl. She was punished for something that wasn't entirely her fault, and it affected her career for years to come.
Now, in a recent interview, music icon Janet Jackson waded into controversy, warning voters of potential chaos surrounding the upcoming U.S. presidential elections in November.
Jackson recently got into trouble after making some controversial comments about Vice President Kamala Harris. During an interview with The Guardian, Janet questioned Harris's racial identity, saying she's not black. Janet also mentioned that she had heard Harris's father was white, which sparked a lot of anger. Many people felt her words were wrong, especially since Kamala Harris made history in 2020 as the first Black and South Asian female vice president.
She also made an inaccurate statement about Vice President Kamala Harris's racial.
Janet's comments caused a big stir online, with some calling her out for being out of touch. Comedian D.L. Hewley made a joke about her questioning Harris's race, while Janet herself has a mixed background. People were surprised because Janet is known for being an advocate for marginalized communities, and her remarks seemed to go against that image. After the interview, a man named Mo El Masri tried to apologize for Janet, but her representative said this apology was not authorized by Janet herself. Sources close to Janet said that she didn't seem to fully understand the damage her words caused. She was reportedly having fun with friends in Paris when the backlash grew, and her response was to just let the situation die down without addressing it. There's also been talk about Janet's brother, Randy, being involved in managing her career. According to insiders, Randy has a lot of control over Janet's decisions, but some people don't think he's good at it. They believe Randy is hurting Janet's career because he's not experienced in the entertainment business and has questionable views. One source said, Janet's bubble is small and she listens to Randy. They also said that Randy, who is a supporter of former President Donald Trump and believes in conspiracy theories, is not helping Janet's image. Many people are concerned about how Randy is handling Janet's career. Some feel that he's making decisions that could hurt her legacy and the good work she's done in the past. They also worry that Janet is too isolated from the world and that Randy is feeding her ideas that might not be in her best interest. Janet faced a loss which deeply hurt her, which was the death of her brother, Michael Jackson. In June 2009, Michael, the king of pop, passed away unexpectedly at the age of 50. He was in the middle of rehearsals for a series of sold-out concerts in London that were meant to restart his career. But one day, Michael was found unresponsive at his home in Los Angeles. Despite efforts to bring him back, he was declared dead at a nearby hospital. The cause of death was an overdose of propofol, a strong painkiller that Michael's doctor, Dr. Conrad Murray, was later found guilty of giving him. Janet, who was very close to Michael, was devastated by his death. She talked about her feelings a year later on the Oprah Winfrey Show. She said that the family tried to help Michael when they noticed he had problems with drugs. They tried to get him to see that he had a problem, but Michael didn't think he needed help. Janet explained that even though people might have thought they were in denial, they weren't. They knew something was wrong, but Michael refused to face it. Janet said that even today, there isn't a single day that goes by when she doesn't think about her brother. His death is still hard to believe, and it left a deep sadness in her heart. Losing someone so close to you is never easy, and for Janet, it was especially painful because of the bond she shared with Michael. In her music, Janet has often dealt with feelings of loss. One of her most famous songs, Together Again, was written after the death of some of her close friends who died from AIDS. Janet didn't want the song to be sad or mournful. Instead, she wanted to celebrate the memories of her friends and the joy they brought to her life. The song, released in 1997, was part of her album The Velvet Rope and became a big hit. It helped raise awareness about AIDS and the fight against the disease. Janet dedicated Together Again to her friends who had passed away from AIDS. In the album's notes, she mentioned their names, saying that she missed them and believed they would all be together again one day. The song became very popular, selling over 6 million copies worldwide. It also helped raise money for AIDS research, with Janet donating proceeds from the song to the American Foundation for AIDS Research, AMFAR. Janet's love and respect for her family, especially Michael, are clear in both her personal life and her music. Janet Jackson's impact on music and pop culture is huge, and her legacy continues to influence artists today. Even though she was born into a famous family, with her brother Michael Jackson being a global superstar, Janet carved out her own path to success. Over time, she became not just an entertainer, but a trendsetter who shifted her image from a young, independent woman to a confident, sexy adult. Her hard work and talent have earned her the title Queen of Pop, and many believe that Janet is the true heir to the Jackson family's musical legacy. Janet played an important role in changing the music industry, especially when it comes to race. In the past, Black artists were often pushed to the side, but Janet, along with other African-American artists like Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston, broke those barriers. They crossed over from R&B to mainstream pop music, which helped make their music universal, not just for Black audiences. Janet's success showed that African-American artists could become pop icons and achieve financial success in the mainstream music world. Not only is Janet known for her music, but she's also praised for her business skills. She managed her career in a way that gave her creative freedom, similar to Madonna, which allowed her to control her image, sound, and how her music reached the public. Janet's ability to reinvent herself while maintaining control over her brand has been a model for other artists to follow. Janet's musical contributions are also huge. She helped shape contemporary R&B with her unique mix of sounds and genres. Her music introduced rap vocals into mainstream R&B, and songs like Nasty influenced the development of New Jack Swing, a popular genre in the late 80s. Her albums in the 80s, like Control and Rhythm Nation 1814, sold millions of copies and became the foundation for modern R&B music. These albums were so impactful that Rhythm Nation 1814 was even added to the National Recording Registry in 2021, a huge honor. Through her collaborations with producers, Janet transformed the dance pop genre, bringing fresh sounds and ideas that helped define the late 80s and early 90s pop music scene. She is often described as a global superstar whose appeal crosses cultural and generational boundaries. Her influence can still be felt today, with many artists like Britney Spears, Jennifer Lopez, Usher, and Beyoncé citing her as an inspiration. Janet's influence goes beyond just her music. She also set the standard for pop performances with her iconic choreography. Many artists, including Britney and Beyoncé, have been inspired by her dance moves and stage presence. Janet didn't just make music, she made an impact on how music is performed, and her legacy continues to shape the entertainment world.